Hey everybody, it's Pastor Steve again. Listen, tonight I want to share with you one of my favorite passages from the book of Joshua, in Joshua chapter 14. I have it here. It's Joshua 14, and we're going to pick it up in verse 10. It says, this is Caleb speaking to his friend Joshua. He says, as you see, the Lord has kept me alive these 45 years, as he promised, since the Lord spoke this word to Moses while Israel was journeying in the wilderness. Here I am today, 85 years old. I am still as strong today as I was the day Moses sent me out. My strength for battle and for daily tasks is now as it was then. Now give me this hill country. The Lord promised me on that day. Because you heard then that the Anakim were there, as well as large fortified cities. Perhaps the Lord will be with me and will drive them out, as the Lord promised. So what we see here, and what's such a blessing about this passage, is Caleb is 85 years old, and you remember him and Joshua were the only two spies that came in the land. Then when Moses sent out the spies in the book of Exodus, that came back and said, "Hey, we can take this land. God's with us. It's just a few giants. Let's go handle it." And here we are, all these years later, 40 years later. They've entered the promised land. They're dividing up their inheritance, and God had promised Joshua and Caleb they could have whatever land they wanted. It says that whatever land their sandal touched would be theirs in the name of the Lord. And so here he is at the end of his life, and Joshua says to his friend Caleb, what land do you want? And he says, I want the mountains. I want the hill country. That's what I want. And I know there's still some giants there. And I know I'm 85 years old. But I've been fighting giants my whole life. What's a few more? I will take the country because God told me I could have it. And I think what's such a blessing to me about this passage is just this idea of how God is faithful to honor his promises. And it may not seem in the battle like we'll see the end, but Caleb knew the whole time. He said, I'm just as strong now as I was. And the reason he can say that is because he knew that his strength came from the Lord. Here's a man who was alive during the time of Moses, saw the people leave Egypt, spied out the promised land, couldn't go there for 40 years, finally entered the land, and was so frustrated that they were held up because people were afraid. And it's amazing to me that in this moment, in this time, as he speaks to Joshua, he says, it's just a few giants. And God promised me the country, and I'm going to take it. And I hope and I pray that we would have that kind of faith in our own lives. That as Caleb had here, that we could trust in the Lord as our strength. And we could know that in all parts of our life, God is who makes us strong. God is who creates and sets us up and does these things. And that it would be the Lord's strength that carried me through. And my hope and my prayer is that I can say in my faith, I'm as strong now as I've ever been. At the end of our lives, we could say, I'm as strong now as I've ever been because God is there. And I pray that we would hold on to the promises God has given us, that we would trust in the things God is doing, and that as he calls us out, no matter what stage of life we're in, no matter how much we've seen from God, that he would call us out and we would see what it is to fight some giants by the hand of God. That's my hope and my prayer for all of us tonight, that we would have that same faith to trust that the promises God has given us will come true, will be fulfilled in his hand according to his time, and that we would understand that our strength comes from the Lord and no one else. So my encouragement for you guys tonight, be strong in the Lord, trust in his word, and know that he will see you through no matter what circumstances come about. And I love Caleb. I think Caleb doesn't get talked about enough in the scripture. We always focus on Joshua and Moses, but Caleb had it together, man. He was faithful the whole time. He trusted God the whole time. And he saw God fulfill a promise. And I'm excited to speak with him someday when we get to the eternity, when we get to rest. I get to ask Caleb what it was like as an 85-year-old man to run them giants off from his house and just see what God did. So I wanted to share that with you guys, that we can have faith, we can have encouragement in the promises of God, because I know that God is our strength. God bless you guys.